Okay, so today we're going to talk about the history of physical therapy and its humble origins way back when, especially now that newer information has come out. We have a guest with us named Britney Phelps.
Hello, I am Britney Phelps.
Oh, it's good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Thank you for doing this with us in advance, in case we forget to say so.
No problem.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll start talking about the history if you want.
Yeah.
At that point.
Works for me. My story is a simple one. I grew up in Illinois, and then pretty much all my life was there. And then got to travel around a little bit with, physical therapy internships. I got to go to California and Arizona and, where else was I? Utah. And then I ended up coming down to Florida. So I'm still kind of new to the Florida area. But, just kind of embracing the culture down here, finding stuff to do in the not snowy weather, which is very nice. But, I grew up dancing, and we can touch on that a little bit later as well. It's kind of what's brought me to where I am now, is what inspires me for my future goals and where I want to be down the road. So it's a little bit.
I'm curious, how did I miss the traveling internships?
Yeah. Well, I've never been one to like to branch out, but somehow or another I ended up going to all these different places, which was cool.
I've heard several other therapists who got to go to different states for their internships. I got to go to North Fort Myers.
Yeah, well, a lot of people wanted to stay in Wisconsin, so there weren't very many internships available. So I just tried to embrace it. But going to Utah was awesome. Yeah. I'm not a big skier. I'm kind of scared of that. I didn't feel like I would hurt myself. But I did like a lot of hiking in the national parks, and California, my aunt lives out there, but it was still really neat being right by the ocean.
Were you there in the summertime or the
I was there in November, so.
Sounds like it'd be cold and snowy.
It was in San Diego.
I
was like, not too much there.
I was thinking Utah.
No, Utah, it was springtime, so it was wet.
But you say that you're not like adventurous or flighty or anything like that, but from what I gather, you are a curious person, and I think that's pretty fitting in your personality.
Well, yeah, I think it's been really neat as I introspectively look at myself over the last, 5-10 years. I have become so much more curious and willing to kind of go after that curiosity, which I think is what has even allowed me to be kind of in this position I am today. So it's exciting. It's scary. There's so much unknown, but sometimes you just have to jump out there and go at it, and you won't know until you try. So.
Oh, I agree. I think you've learned more. I think you have a richer perspective because of that,
Absolutely.
And so I think being eclectic I think it's a great thing. I think it's underappreciated as well.
Yeah. Well, you gotta be a little bit of a weirdo too to go to all these new places. So I don't know. It's.
And you are a weirdo.
I am.
Weirdos.
I embrace fully. I am 100% a paint by number listing weirdo, and I love it.
I don't know. You're like a type A. I do the checklist.
Oh, I'm a huge lister. Oh my gosh, I get so much satisfaction from checking a box off. I have a daily journal, and every day I even put the hours I work, and then I put everything I'm going to do, so at the end of the day I can check off.
Oh, and you're detail oriented within the list that you make?
It's so bad. Times are set.
That's a lot of time wasted in just.
Oh, but it's so much fun. Yeah. You get different colors. You have crayons, markers, colored pencils. You two are wondering why you invited me here now.
No, I think you're a great addition, actually. Joe, you're not. He's a weirdo, for God's sakes, but he doesn't do lists. You know what I mean?
No, I don't do lists. I think about doing it, and I probably should, but I can't keep anything in order like that.
Join the dark side.
You'll love it. From what you said, it sounds very colorful.
It is very colorful. You can really make it your own.
I can see you with highlighters, different colored markers, and.
I've got a whole bin that's labeled.
Oh my! My wife is the same way. She says the same thing, and all of her friends that have a similar personality. They get this certain amount of satisfaction just by crossing off something or checking something off their list. And I'm like, what kind of satisfaction are you getting? Because I'd rather just be, lazy and not worry about writing it down.
But then you forget. You run the risk of forgetting.
Well, here's the downside to that. I don't think so. I think the people that don't write a list typically have a better memory. And the people that write a list, and I'm only saying this because of, in comparison to my wife, anecdotal information, my wife has a terrible memory. And she can't navigate herself out of the paper sack. She has like no idea where to go. She doesn't even know what street we live on, to be honest with you. She gets lost. She goes for a walk and gets lost. I'm going to pick her up,
If you've ever been in the car with Ray, then I don't think you would let him talk so much about direction, navigation, his wife's sense of direction versus his own ability to navigate through his own neighborhood, or let's say my neighborhood.
It's not great.
Oh no, I think I'm a pretty good navigator.
Yeah, of course he does. Yeah, he thinks.
I'm the one that gave you provided the address to get here, but I provided the directions, street by street. So I mean, hey.
Which I realized you had sent me when I was almost here. So that's why I had never got the directions.
And I did have to provide him with these same directions to get here numerous times after he'd been here several times.
Well, in all fairness,
to ask me where do I turn again? Even when I was in the car with him, is where's the turn? Where do I go? And I'm like, you've been there before.
Well, it has to be a few more times. Now I can do it automatically. However, I think you're that sadistic prick that might just allow me to go 5 miles past your house just to make fun of me. And the event that I don't get to the house, I do. I think.
Yeah, I would probably let you do that. One of these times, if you're still asking for direction, I'll be like, hold on, and let you go right by it. Okay, it's coming up.
Right.
Just keep going.
Yeah, it's kind of like when we're on the water and we're kayaking. We're gonna go to that point. And I'm like, well, which point? There's 5 points up there. No, just go to that point. And then we start to skew off. And you're like, well, where the hell are you going? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a useful teammate there. Okay, so we might as well get started. We'll start with the topic at hand, and then I'd like to dive a little bit more into your perspective and passion, and the realm of physical therapy and what you want to apply.
Absolutely.
I think you're a terrific therapist. I think you're going to be great.
Thank you.
Especially, with the experience that you're going to get. I think you're going to do wonderful things. I don't think you're going to be the complacent kind of therapist.
I hope not.
Tendency. Yeah. I think you're going to help redefine our profession.
Thank you.
So, looking into the information for the history of physical therapy, what'd you find? What'd you think?
For myself, I was, I know we had briefly, talked about some of the origins. So I saw some of the origins, how it had started back in the 1800s. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to overcomplicate a timeline, so I don't want to jump too much without us kind of filling in the gaps.
No, that's fine. So I'll start here. We may have to rewind the clock a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Technically, the profession was named in the early 1800s. Okay, the 19th century, early 19th century. 1800s, for those that get confused about the 19th century. So that's the technical version. However, throughout history, for God knows how long, and I have a list here from places throughout the world that used bone setting, massage therapy, hydrotherapy, other forms of manipulations that they refer to as manual therapy. We're talking about the Balinese of Indonesia, the Lamai Lamai of Hawaii, Japan, China, Persia, Egypt, India, Central Asia with shamans, the Sabadors in Mexico, Nepal, Russia, and Norway. We have these old carvings and these ancient statues and sculptures and papyrus of pictures depicting people using physical medicine way back when. I mean, you're talking about at the advent of medicine, okay? So obviously, physical therapy, which, encompasses all those different things, were basically practiced by the early practitioners of medicine, right? So Homer wrote about manual therapy as early as 1000 BC. Homer is the author of the Iliad and the Odyssey. the famed hero Ulysses. I love Homer and those books. Did you read them?
I don't think so.
What about you, Brittany?
I believe I read some of them. If you asked me anything about them, I could not tell you.
No. I don't know. I just love that type of literature. But that was at a time Homer was thought to be making up mythical creatures, mythical people, mythical places. And of course, in the 19th century, 1800s, a gentleman without archaeological education who was curious about the city of Troy went and investigated in Turkey, and sure enough discovered the city of Troy was in fact real and not a myth like many people thought for hundreds of years after the death of Homer. So again, Homer might be telling the truth about Troy. He's also telling the truth about manual therapy as early as 1000 BC. And then you fast forward a little bit, 460 BC, you have Hippocrates, you have Hector, you have some other Persian I say physicians, but really just Persian medical practitioners who are using spinal manipulations to treat scoliosis and to relieve pain. They're using hydrotherapy with exercise to help improve one's not just body, but their mind, and also to treat certain ailments, and deformities. Okay, so then we fast forward to the 1800s.
Woohoo!
And that's where you take off. So you go ahead and take off from the rest here from what you know.
So I don't have the name written down. I know you do. Lynn.
Yeah, Per Heinrich Lean.
There you go.
So,
and
or PH Lean.
With the initial coining of the term physiotherapy, and even I mean, looking through some of these articles, they show the pictures of these contraptions that they were using for some of these initial treatments. It's wild. It's so just medieval looking. Some of the way that they would strap people into these things to do their therapy.
I've been joking about that for a long time. Every time we use traction, and somebody says, "Oh, it's like the torture rack," I'm like, "It really is." And or we'll use the Graston instruments or any kind of instrument-assisted soft tissue mobilization. I like to kind of make a production of it. Sometimes I'll roll them up in the towel or roll them up in a case, and I'll set it down in front of the patient and then unroll it out there. And these shiny metal blades are like, "What kind of medieval tools are those?" I'm like, "Oh, they're instruments of health." So, and again, I see these things, these archaic weapons, and I'm like, no, those are medical. Like that, they've been using those for medical for years.
You got to tell the rest of that story. He doesn't just unroll the towel, but he also puts his hair up, and he has like a twisted laugh where he's like, "You will tell me the truth." And it's like a villain from a Bond movie or something. And those things, the Graston instruments, they look like they could be sharp.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't comfort his patients as far as sharpness. I tell them, hey, go ahead and touch this contour here so they know that it's a blunted instrument that can be used for mobilization. He's like, yeah, I was just filing this in the back.
There could be some blood.
You may have some splinters. And yeah, exactly. You even say, hey, you might bruise. You might bleed from this. And then he also says, by the way, do you have an allergy to either like bees, or what was it? What else you asked him?
Coconut oil.
Coconut, yeah.
You allergic to coconut oil, beeswax.
And if they say no, I'm pretty sure he's throwing a little bit of coconut flake, inside the lotion there.
See about that.
But that's right, yeah. So Per Heinrich Lean, also named as the father of Swedish gymnastics, which was renamed into medical gymnastics. He founded the what does it say here? The Royal Central Institute of Gymnastics in 1813, using massage, manipulation, and exercise as treatment. He the individuals that were using this technique in medicine were physicians. Some of them are physicians, very few though, not a whole lot. The majority of the profession, for the most part, stayed away from this branch of medicine. But and I'm going to butcher the name, but the Heil gymnast. I hope that's the correct way. But they were named the Heil gymnast, and they were not necessarily schooled at first. They just went in as an apprenticeship, learned the techniques and then started working, and then through life experience applied their techniques. Eventually, though, in the latter part of the 1800s or 19th century, okay, they did develop educational programs within schools, which you would argue is a physical therapy school. And to educate each other, they also created other institutes to support themselves until the medical profession started to specialize and things were being taken, because of economic opportunity at that point. But there is another word that was coined by Per Heinrich Lehm. It was a Swedish word, which I'm going to butcher again, but gymnast, or let me just spell it, okay? It could be just juke there, gymnast, but it's SJUKGYMNAST. And that is the direct translation to physical therapist. So the original physical therapists were probably gym instructors or gymnastic instructors, and back in Sweden technically. Although they were doing manipulation way before then too, as a part of it.
I wonder what kind of techniques were they actually using. When they before they even started the schools, what was their routine or their techniques?
It's amazing that you say that, because the artwork, which I wish we could apply here, if we can ever figure out the technology, we'll try to apply it. But they have people on tables. They have people cracking necks and backs, no different than a lot of techniques that we use today, actually. They had them in sitting positions, and prone on their stomach, or in supine, or on their side, and just manipulating them, massaging them. And then those machines you talked about, they were like a medieval total gym, or Pilates reformer,
Right.
Or Bowflex. Right.
Which something I find interesting as well is if this did start, with the gymnasts in Sweden, that's such an extreme level of movement to start the profession there, and then how it's adapted to just the general population. But gymnasts are just unreal with the flexibility and the amount of motion and strength they require. So I think it's interesting how it's had to then adapt to a different population of people as well.
Well, I think too that we have to be careful that we're thinking of gymnasts as gymnasts, but in the case of this, I don't think they were referring to it as in gymnastics. They called it gymnastics because there were people working in a gym.
Oh, I get it.
Right.
So more of an active population, people.
They were doing a number of different things. They were doing passive movements. They were doing active movements, assisted active movements.
Oh.
They were doing a lot of different things that we do today, and different varieties. Some of them did it in water. Some of them did it, on a table. Some of them did it in a machine. Some of them, they were running. They were walking. They were doing a whole bunch of variety, a plethora of different techniques.
Rather than in today's terminology, we may not call these people gymnasts, as we would call a gymnast today, somebody doing gymnastic routines and that sort of exercise, but more of a gym rat, or more of a just, I would say health conscious, but just, like she said, physically active. But somebody who's working out, whether it be running, lifting, training in some sort of way.
No, you're absolutely correct. These are people that are exercising. At this point in time, medicine was not familiar with small particles. They had no idea that atoms exist. They didn't know bacteria exist. They didn't know virus existed at the time. They didn't think washing hands was important. Surgery was not.
Well, we know now that certainly is not needed.
Exactly.
Washing hands. Who does that?
I know.
Just touch your face all the time.
Right, yeah. Just lick your hand.
Yeah, it's fine. Build your immune system.
No, seriously, wash your hands. In the lieu of COVID, wash your hands. For the love of God.
I for years have just applied the George Carlin technique.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar.
One brush.
Yeah.
All crevices. And you probably even added a crevice, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you
don't remember that,
it's clean.
Have you ever heard this?
No.
From George Carlin? It's one of his funniest bits. I'm a huge fan of George Carlin, as he is. And George Carlin had a joke where he used one brush to brush his, I think it's armpits, asshole, and teeth. I think that's what it was. And he said that he would do that in that order. And so
Oh.
he would clean his armpits first, then his asshole, then he would brush his teeth with the same brush.
Ew.
Or maybe he threw in the crotch somewhere too. I can't really remember.
He did include there was the 4. Yeah.
Armpits, asshole, crotch, and teeth. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
In that order. So obviously he would clean his crotch after his asshole, which means
that those two could have been interchanged. The joke was that the teeth were last.
Well, if he did the asshole first, that means he's walking around with chronic stink dick.
It also steak mouth, but
that's
again,
that's what gums for.
The bigger point, or the part of the joke that I was hitting on was washing the hands. That first of all starts out to set up this whole thing. I've seen this played. People have posted it on Facebook. Everything now with the pandemic on washing the hands and this whole hygiene and germs. Carlin's got a whole bit on germs. He goes off talking about where he was raised in New York. They swam in the Hudson River. This was not a clean waterway. It was dirty, filthy, mucky. And he built his immune system this way because he was constantly exposed to this filth. Yeah. And he goes. The joke goes,
we swam in shit, raw sewage.
Yeah.
My immune system is equipped with the equivalent of an AK-47, AR-15s, tanks, ballistic missiles, nuclear weapons, and fighter jets or some shit like that.
Exactly.
With naval carriers. It was quite hilarious. And he said, that's why when he drops a burger on the floor in the middle of Calcutta during a soccer riot.
The poor section.
And the poor section. He can eat it and not get sick.
So.
But, there's a lot of truth to that as far as medicine is concerned. But the point, kiddos, eat shit off the floor and don't worry about washing your hands.
10 seconds, 20 seconds.
We're responsible PTs, I think, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about immunity all this year. So
there you go. It fits right in.
It does. It might increase our business a little bit, too, if you're not washing your hands. Well, brushing your teeth after they do asshole, crotch, and armpit. Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to the Royal Central Institute of Gymnastics, which was actually a very influential institute in in Sweden, the Netherlands, all through Europe, actually. Physicians who opened up clinics to do physical therapy actually had to get approved authority from this institute. Mm-hmm. They notably used German military training techniques and, interestingly enough, Chinese manual practices. So I wonder if they were doing Graston or A-stem or any type of Wushu or whatever techniques they used back then. Also, we have to mention that at that point in time, before then, in China, Kung Fu and Tai Chi and many other different movement practices were being used as treatments as well and for daily health practice. But this guy, along with some other individuals, got together and basically they're cited as the first physical therapists or the beginners, the fathers of physical therapy. They established a scientific basis for education and clinical methods through tracking patient outcomes. So they were tracking patient outcomes and comparing it to their treatment methods in hopes to determine what the better methods of care was. And that's really interesting.
When was the beginning of the first outcomes? When do we have the first evidence of outcomes?
I didn't find a date for that, but I mean, it must have been in between 1813 and somewhere after like that.
Do we know how effective or what kind of outcomes they were having?
The stuff I read, and this is jumping forward a little bit to more of the polio, World War I time era, but they were talking about how people undergoing physiotherapy, physical therapy, were improving and rehabbing much faster, which is why it began to really take off and start to grow, because it was the soldiers were recovering, wound healing, and just range of motion and overall strength. So
you're absolutely right. Amputees as well. But at the time, remember, surgery was, you got shot in the leg, let's cut your leg off. Okay. You're sick, well, we're going to treat you with, some mercury or something else. It wasn't truly scientific in what it is today. And at that time, physical therapy was showing to be quite beneficial. People were doing quite well with it. and so physicians tried to get
Yeah.
involved. And I wanted to mention this. The graduates of this institute were licensed by Sweden's National Board of Health as early as 1887. So you're talking about years and years before osteopathy was created and before chiropractic was created, and the discovery or the talk of small particles such as bacteria that could get you sick. The other thing too is that some physicians or notable historical physicians that graduated from this program was Jonas Heinrich Kellgren, who was the father-in-law and heavy influencer to Edgar Syriacs Sr., the father of James Syriacs. You remember James Syriacs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With all the joints and
That's right.
father
of manual medicine. Yeah. Right, exactly. Well,
that was a joint. If you didn't get that, that was
no, it's okay. No, but yeah, no, and so they were influenced by the RCIG. I thought that was really interesting, and that is another reason why perhaps James Syriacs was so heavily involved in rehabilitation and manipulative medicine way back then, as a founding father.
That's cool.
I thought so too. I thought it was pretty neat. All right, do you have anything else around that time period too?
Ooh, I did not delve as deep into the 1800s as you did.
Well, there was something else that I wanted to talk about. There were a lot of founding fathers in manual medicine. I don't need to go too far in manual medicine, but I did want to share, there was something else that I wanted to implicate back in the late 1800s. Let's see if I can't find it here. I talked about James Syriacs. Let's see here. Okay, so in 1894, 4 nurses formed the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy. Lucy Robinson, Rosalind Paget, Elizabeth Manley, and Margaret Palmer. And then which led to, they found that in 1894, in the United Kingdom, to protect and sustain practices held by soldiers after recovering from injury. It was initially formed as a Chartered Society of Massage and Medical Gymnastics in 1920, and then later became the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy in 1944. And so I bring all that up because it's really interesting how therapy kind of is influenced by all these different sects or realms of so Mary McMillan, which most people think of physical therapy in the United States, they think of, well, it was founded by a majority of women. Mary McMillan, who was the first Reconstruction aide, which was what was termed for women who were participating as physical therapists and during the polio epidemic and World War II, which later she founded an organization that would become APTA in the 1940s. But she, too, was heavily influenced by the RCIG. And she wrote about the RCIG, the Royal Center Institute, the Royal Central Institute of Gymnastics. So she too was influenced by the same institute that James Syriacs was also influenced by. Yeah. So, and there's more to go about it in the Netherlands. They go in greater detail as far as the information I have. I don't want to dive into that too much here. But we went to Mary McMillan. Let's see here. So in 1913, the University of Otago in New Zealand, and in 1914, Reed College in Portland, Oregon, established the first schools of physical therapy officially. Mm-hmm. Okay. And in 1917 and 18, World War I was rampant, and physical therapy was needed more than ever. And that's when you had a bunch of Reconstruction aid programs that developed in the United States. And that was the advent of physical therapy. So we see physical therapy as a whole being created in, Northern Europe and Scandinavia and Netherlands and whatnot. And even though it's been utilized throughout the whole world way before then, but officially in Europe. And then we see it come over to the United States during World War I, and even though we had a modest beginning in physical therapy with Mary McMillan and some other Reconstruction aid programs and individuals, physical therapy is old. It's been around for as long as traditional medicine's been around, and it's been around much longer than chiropractics and osteopathy. So, however, I don't think it gets that credit. And I don't think people are taught that necessarily in school. What do
No,
you think?
I know I was never taught to the depths of, what we've talked about today. A lot of it starts with the polio,
Right.
outbreak.
That was the first that I'd known or heard was the World War and just the recovery of the soldiers.
Right. Yeah, because they're telling you this is what American physical therapy began. We don't tend to think of it from a global perspective, which I wish we would.
Because I think there's so much that you gain from the other countries' perspectives, and the conferences that were held to allow therapists and aides to learn from each other and learn from the medical profession as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Is it jumping too far forward to go to the 1950s?
No, go ahead. I think that we've established that Mary McMillan was influenced by the RCIG. You have James Syriacs that also influenced by the RCIG that was teaching physical therapy or reconstruction aids, manual medicine at that point, using exercise and other modalities. Electrotherapy was really big at the end of the 1800s, and so physical therapists were using that as well to help not necessarily just physicians. Mostly physical therapists were using it to help stimulate musculature and to help with neuromuscular re-education. That sounds like a modern word, but that word has actually been around for a couple hundred years. So they were using it then to help with hypertrophy, muscular development, range of motion, all that kind of
Well,
stuff.
and when was it that the bow baths kind of came in with PNF? Was that
Yeah, I want to say that was around the 40s and 50s.
40? Okay, because
Exactly.
all that PNF stuff started to take away, which it's you so quickly can forget how some of these techniques have been in place for so long that we still use so regularly every day, which I thought was cool. But yeah, I was doing some research and found that the first World Conference was held in England in 1953, I believe, and it was physicians and the therapists that attended, which I thought was pretty cool. So you're able to really get a more broad view of what's going on, whether the the physicians were engaged in it or not. They were still aware and kind of knew what was going on. And these people, I watched this video, and they literally would get up on stage and have an entire treatment session. They would do groups of 10, 15 children up there, jumping around, doing bunny hops, doing elephant trunk swings, doing all this stuff for their rehab. And then they'd get a group of 15 men up there that were, strengthening their trunk and their core, and they were doing, different arm patterns and standing. It's just such a different type of perspective that they had for their conferences back then to how we do things now. It's so much more, let's all sit here, let's talk about something. And there it was like an auditorium. It was like a whole production that they had. They were up on a stage, and it was just very interesting to see that. But to think that they've went from 12 countries to kind of where we are now, it's just so cool to see that that start off at that
A
point.
lot of our continuing education, I feel like we still use a version of that first model where we get up, we practice, we do these different moves. We may not have a whole group of people on stage showing us or going through it to show us. We have one or two people kind of to talk about it, and then we all get up and practice. But I recall seeing actually Ray even use the bunny hop, having a person bunny hop in the clinic just a month or two ago. He had this guy hopping. So that's why I asked earlier about what kind of techniques the gymnasts were using back then, way back then when they were starting out, as opposed to what we're doing now today. I was curious about the effectiveness of what they did. I assumed, or it seems like they probably did a more global movement approach to their work, and we really emphasize a lot of that now. At least some of us try to do just a more full body, more full range of motion from head to toe, to incorporate as much muscle across the body as we can, as much activation, stabilization
It's a hard word.
as we can. The two words together. You put those two words together, and it's like, forget it. And then you should see me try to type those two words. Always misspell,
Form a new
mistype
one.
those two.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I was thinking about earlier about what they did and how effective it was versus what we do now, and how much of it we might use from their models versus new train of thoughts versus newer reverting back to older train of thoughts.
So yeah, let's answer that. I think we're still using a lot of those techniques to this day. There's a lot of paradigms, and a lot of people are very dogmatic about what school of thought they come from, so they don't let go of those paradigms. No matter how effective they may be or ineffective they may be, it's a dogma that we subscribe to. Mary McMillan, the mother of physical therapy in America, I just wanted to be precise here. In 1921, she founded American Women's Physical Therapy Association, which later became the APTA in the 40s. But to answer your question, back then, when you had these hygienists or these medical gymnastic physical educators, at the time, it was thought that if you got sick, you needed bed rest. If you had heart disease, you had to have bed rest. Okay. What happened was, for whatever reason, manual medicine was still being used to treat many different things. But there was a split in allopathic medicine and homeopathic medicine. And the physicians really went more towards allopathic medicine. And one of the things I read last night was that physicians felt, well, being homeopathic, doing manipulations, and participating in exercise is very labor intensive. And you get paid for it, but it's more labor intensive than what you're getting paid. However,
can I ask you, I don't mean to interrupt, but can you explain to me and the audience the difference between homeopathic and allopathic?
Yeah, homeopathic would be your bone setters, would be the ones that are interested in using nutritional concepts, manipulations, massage, things that necessarily are considered to be more holistic in nature. Concepts that may be not fully proven, although vetted. Some of them may not be vetted, but for the most part, they come from an institute of manual medicine and nutritional practices, whereas allopathic medicine utilizes a bit more of a scientific approach. However, they're looking more towards like pharmaceutical care, prescriptions, recommendations of what to do and not to do, although both of them provide that. But this is a little bit more stringent in the fact that if you had pneumonia, you certainly do not exercise, you lay in bed. If you have a broken bone, you have to cast it. Whereas a bone setter might say, let's move it a bit. Okay? So now, to be correct, to give you the whole picture, when Hippocrates came along and all these people that we talked about, up until the late 1800s, medicine as a whole was the same. Medicine as a whole was practiced by pretty much everybody. Okay, so the exercise, what's wrong?
I was just watching the reflection on the wall that the dog saw.
Oh.
So he's gonna,
Run around.
it's the pen. Yeah,
Oh,
the pen keeps reflecting to the wall, so he's gonna go crazy if that keeps moving.
Okay. So at the time, it was thought that in medicine, if you were sick, you don't do certain things. And then you had these people who started like moving and say, no, physical activity is not just important for like overcoming an infection, helping with breathing. It's also very important for the mind. And some physicians were in tune with that, but not a lot. And other people who were your experiential practitioners, because there wasn't a specific education for that, okay? They were like physicians, but they were not schooled in medicine, nor were they seen as physicians, the higher gymnasts. They basically went down this track, and people were getting better. People were doing quite well, as Brittany alluded to earlier. And some physicians saw this is modern advancement. Now, as always, when you see improvement, you see there's a changing of the guard. There's you need to adapt with the times. And most people, especially the majority of any profession, they tend to hold back. They tend to say, I don't know, I don't feel comfortable with change, and they don't change, and they don't update themselves, whereas other physicians do. And those physicians that got more involved with these hygienists and learned from them and utilized them didn't do the work. They referred their patients to them to be treated. This is really, really interesting. They then called themselves hygienists, all right? And in the late 1800s, there was economic depressions across the world, all right? And what happened was you had people you had competition, and the physicians, for the most part, were not doing that well financially. And they looked at their competition, the hygienists, as being a threat to the profession from an economic standpoint. So they appealed to the government to basically block them from seeing patients and allowing physicians to see them. And what's really, really interesting, and some of the literature that I found, was that there was a group of men in the Netherlands who were hygienists. They formed a group. Let's see where
A group of men that formed a group, huh?
of men.
Just to
No
be clear. No women?
No women.
No women allowed. They always make it worse.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
To have that problem.
Let me find them. It was a weird name. It was, of course, it's a Swedish or German name.
You sure you're going to be able to pronounce it?
I'm going to purposely butcher it for you. Where is it? They formed the Society for Practicing Gymnastics in the Netherlands, led by a gentleman named E. Meekman. And basically, they originally met, I think, in a bar or hotel or something like that, and they formed this group to permit them to do work. The other thing, too, is we have to be clear, is that there was also a group of people called bunglers who were pretending to be hygienists or physicians, but had no education, no formal training. They were just terrible practitioners, and they were lying, and they were doing incompetent work and hurting people. There's a small percentage of people, but they were hurting people. And so the hygienists and the physicians who worked together to treat these patients were concerned about it, so they formed their groups. Now, physicians are trying to take power of this branch of medicine because it's lucrative, and at that point in time, you didn't have a ton of pharmaceutical care, and surgery wasn't big, so they saw an advantage to take it. So they started to politically gain support to take that from hygienists. And then you have this group of men who formed the Society for Practicing Hygienists in the Netherlands to protect the rights of hygienists. And they wanted to work with physicians. This is where it gets really interesting. To provide political advantage or to prevent political sabotage, what these men decided to do was to partner with physicians and allowing them to refer patients to them for care. So in other words, they said, no, you're right. Let the patient go see the physician first. And if the physician thinks that they're appropriate for care, then they can refer that patient to us. And that's when they started referring, and then later became a prescription, which is now another referral process again, because we are independent autonomous practitioners. But they did that not because they were incompetent, not because the physicians knew what they're doing. The physicians were not really doing a lot of this because they wanted to maintain political agreement with the physicians and not be completely shut out. All right, and at that time too, they were being educated and all these different formal exercise paradigms and manipulative paradigms and modalities as well. So I thought that was intriguing. Yeah. But the exercise that you talked about earlier, exercise was not seen as value, and people started messing around and they started utilizing exercise with the machines that Britney talked about, with lifting weights. Benjamin Franklin is credited with inventing the dumbbell.
Huh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, and you're talking about early 1800s. He advocated for, if you have a fever, drink very cold water to break it. And he invented the dumbbell and used dumbbells for resistance training.
Huh.
Isn't that funny?
That's pretty cool.
Isn't that cool? There's a ton of innovation in exercise from that point. I mean, you have Pilates in the early 1900s, and you have a ton of different. I mean, you had bodybuilders back in the late 1800s. Remember those cartoons with the chest is sticking up kind of thing? So people were doing resistance training. They're doing aerobic work. They're doing aquatic therapy. They're doing massage. They're doing spinal manipulations and joint manipulations, active range of motion, passive range of motion, assisted range of motion, and electrotherapy. I don't know about ultrasound, but they were doing electrotherapy back then too. So I mean, it's been
I'm
around.
not sure.
I know that people have been exercising for almost forever, all the way back to ancient Greece. And I wish that I would have looked back and seen what exactly they did for their exercise. I mean, they were a very, I want to say, health conscious group of people. They believed very strongly in taking care of their bodies, both physically as well as nutritiously. We've talked about diets from different parts of the world, as well as diets for different seasons. They used a diet, they changed their diet with the season. They, based on, I believe, two things. One, what was available in each season.
Right.
And then two, how the food would affect their bodies in the cold weather, hot weather, or just the environment that they were going through at that time. But I wish I could remember what they did for exercises. But I know that they enjoyed exercising naked, which and
who doesn't?
Yeah,
I don't.
What?
It's uncomfortable.
I mean,
Not that I've tried, but
not
like.
in ancient Greece, because in ancient Greece, everybody I think was. I shouldn't say everybody, because that excludes the people that, obviously there's always people that aren't included in the everybody, but
like the fat people. Nobody said, "Hey,
well,
you know what you should do? You should exercise naked."
I think a lot of the people were proud of their bodies. They wanted to be seen, and this might be again an unfair judgment, but I mean they were proud. It was something that they took pride in, they took care in, and it was seen to be. It was actually almost law or almost mandatory that you took care of yourself by doing exercise, and not letting yourself get to a point where you would be more vulnerable for illness, more vulnerable for sickness that might have something to do with the fact that, well, if you get sick or incapacitated or let yourself go, then somebody else is going to have to take care of you when you had, and we know that you can take care of yourself by following these regimens.
Well, that makes sense, especially when you're talking about the Spartan culture, because their government was a militarized government, and you fought. Everybody fought.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you were not healthy and you did not stay and have physical stamina or physical ability, how are you going to serve the state at times of war? It was a warring country.
Now, I believe everybody did have to do at least some time in the military, right?
For Sparta?
Yeah.
I mean, well, they took the boys.
All the boys, yeah.
At a young age, and they trained them all the way up until their death in the military or retirement. So, but they're talking about Sparta, not versus Athens. But back then, life was hard. They're physically active. They did train. They did really care about the nutritional perspective, as well as what they believed in as far as their gods are concerned. Another thing that is interesting is that the reason why David, the statue of David, had a little penis was because the Greeks and the Romans thought that a little penis was more representative of God. It was classy.
It was
Classier.
classy. Stay
So if you
classy,
had-
San Diego.
Right, if you had, stay classy. But if you had a big penis, I'm pretty sure they were like, yeah, don't get naked.
You don't want to take away from the rest of the physique, right?
No, they valued the guys with the small penises.
Yeah.
I think. I'm pretty sure that's true.
No comment.
And that's why the statue of David, he's got a amazing
Here, yeah.
physique, and he's got this itty little thing,
Yeah.
Maybe he was just cold.
It could, yeah, or he could be a shower, not a grower, right?
Or a grower, not a shower.
Oh yeah, maybe is
don't
that the
know.
way it goes?
I
wouldn't
think
know,
so.
but
I don't
okay.
know. I'm thinking,
Okay, maybe it's the other way around. He's a grower and not a shower. Okay, that makes
he's not,
sense. Well, he's
not gonna
inefficient,
be a
right? If
shower,
it's slapping around when he's running, to outrun other people, it's inefficient. And so you want that thing to tuck up into your body so you can, have less drag, be more aerodynamic. And then when you're messing around with your wife, surprise. Okay, not funny.
Okay.
Okay, but that's the history of physical therapy, and we fast forward to like today.
From that to that's
Isn't that
it.
crazy? Yeah, we talk about sex and physical therapy all the time. And when you exercise and sex, you have to be naked.
So there you go. That proves your point.
Thank you.
There you go.
I just think it's better for you're using all those stabilizing muscles when you're naked anyway. You're not bracing yourself. Think about that.
I'll think about it.
No, you think about it. So, okay, so we fast forward. We got past Mary McMillan, who helped created the APTA. Then we go to the BOBAS, which introduced neuromuscular facilitation, and you have all these different founding fathers of manual therapy within osteopathic medicine, within chiropractics, within physical therapy that just accelerated where we are. And we have the World Congress, we have the International Federation that was created in the 70s, and now we have the advent of the doctoral programs in physical therapy, as well as other specializations within physical therapy that's only pushing for a rigorous and particular specialties that will enhance patient care.
Do you know when all those specialties kind of started to evolve and started to get
In physical therapy?
Yeah, because that's not something I'm familiar with, is when that all began, being able to specialize and go delve into whether it's geriatrics or, sports medicine or wound care.
Well, specialties started in the early 1900s, the 20th century for those kids. In the late 1800s, the late 19th century. Specialization started to occur, especially among physicians. And that was that's where orthopedics came from. They sprung up and they really tried to jump on this concept of physical therapy and be the experts. And that's part of the reason why there was some conflict. There was at the beginning of the 1900s, there's a lot of conflict between the initial physical therapists and the physicians as far as controlling that branch of medicine and who's allowed to see the patient and get permission to work with the patient and whatnot. And then what you see is as physical therapy grows and spreads across the world and develops in America, is that the specialization was always there, but really pretty much increased over the span of the last 40 years of orthopedics and pediatrics. But for the most part, polio and World War II, Reconstruction aids, rehabilitation aids, they were working on soldiers and children with deformities and polio survivors for the majority. And there's other people. You have PNF that came along at around that time. I believe that was like the 20s through the 50s, out in the western portion of the United States, where they did a lot of work with people that just weren't getting any better. People that had strokes, people that had neurological complications, children with deformities, and that was always manual, always.
Right.
And so they specialized back then, and then we merged, and then we started to branch off again. But we're branching off in a more coordinated fashion.
Right.
So I'm happy where we are. I think we're doing great as a profession, and I would just love to see more competent growth. And let's own this shit. Let's own our history. Let's own ourselves, and let's just take it further.
Yeah, I think the more you know about our history and where it all started, it's inspiring to want, they start with not having the research methods that we have now. I mean, the data collection and all that stuff. I mean, look at what they did, and they made all these improvements, and they were just kind of having people do generalized exercise. I mean, and now it's cool to not forget about that, but use that as inspiration to keep pushing forward, to keep on improving when we have all this technology and ability to improve things now.
Right. I think it's cool. Yeah. I think as another point to go back to is that those individuals that founded this, that put it forward, that really put their name, they stamped their name and history on this profession, were no different than many of us in this profession. Mm-hmm. They were passionate, they were determined, competent, and they too were not looking just to work with people. They were looking at a scientific process to determine what techniques, what methods have the best outcomes. I think that's beautiful. They're looking, oh, let's not just do this. No, why is that helping? And they collaborated together to improve.
And be efficient and
Yeah.
not just, dilly-daddle through someone's recovery, but how are you going to get them better the fastest? What's going to facilitate that?
And they didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But they had the personality that many of us have to do that, and they pushed it for us. And so, in essence, today, we're just standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think like you said, it's awe-inspiring and fucking cool to think that, man, like, those people, they were kick-ass. And I'm so glad that they're our founding fathers and mothers.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Very cool.
Okay. So anyway, let's talk about you a little bit. Now, we talked about the history. We talked about, your history, where you traveled around, did some PT, you're still trying to, I know we've talked a little bit, you're still trying to find where you want to be, where your place is. And talk about your passion, talk about what you want to do in your career and where you want to go.
Oh, this is the fun stuff. So I like I had mentioned earlier, I grew up dancing. I mean, I started when I was 3 years old, and I went all the way through college and graduate school, all of that good stuff. I mean, that was my life growing up. I would, all the way through middle school and high school, I would spend at least 30 hours a week at the dance studio. It's every day after school, you do your homework there, you go there on the weekends, you perform on the weekends. That was like my family, so it's like a lifestyle. And I went to therapy a few times for, back problems and stuff like that with dance. And I really enjoyed.
What kind of dancing? Were you like a crunker?
Oh gosh, I'm not that cool. Remember, I'm weird.
So you did the robot.
Exactly.
Okay.
No, I've done everything but ballroom and Irish. I've never dabbled in Irish, but I've done, ballet, point. I really like the slower stuff, the lyrical, contemporary, modern. I've done jazz, hip hop. More of the character, older school kind of stuff. So I've done a little bit of everything, tap. It's all really, it's very interesting. It's really enjoyable. And now that I'm finding that I really enjoy being in more of an outpatient setting for physical therapy, the realm of possibilities of working with dancers and all of that. And one of my friends and I in school for one of our projects did a project on the biomechanics of point versus ballet and looking at the different joints and, your ankle, knees, and hips and just the increased torque that's required to produce these movements. I mean, it's incredible. The end ranges of motion that these people have to, you're not just dealing with your average Joe Schmo who comes in with a problem. I mean, they have to be able to get up on their toes. They need to be able to hyperextend and wing out their feet and produce different movements that a lot of people can't do. And then stabilizing those movements. It's just so incredible. So, that's really what drives me to want to be better and to want to keep progressing to maybe start to work with populations like that. And
let me ask you this.
Yes.
What you're describing is basically gravity-defying elements, attributes of limitless potential from the human body. Pretty much, there is no limitations except for the limitations we place on ourselves.
Yeah.
Joe and I have talked about that many times. We expect too little from people. We tell people over and over and over again as a profession, from a conservative perspective, don't expect so much. Don't try so hard. Do little. Don't work as hard. Except for when it comes to Joe and I.
Oh, right.
He's a ball buster. I don't know if you can tell. But all the patients say that, Joe.
I do. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what you're saying there because
you're a Greek ball buster apparently. You're telling them to get naked, do some exercises. No, I'm joking. But my question is, for you, with that perspective, with what you saw and what you've been influenced by, and what you probably have done yourself, how do you apply that into your care today, and as a physical therapist?
I think it makes me appreciate movement more. There's just, and finding something you enjoy doing, because there's so many times where exercise, but there's a lot of people that don't just like to exercise. For me, it was really hard to leave school where I had a group that I danced with multiple times a week and not have that outlet anymore. It was really, really hard. And so it's helping people find something and some sort of activity that they can be active in to just, for again, that generalized exercise to help with so many of these problems, especially since the pandemic, where people are sitting at home, they're not moving. I mean, we're seeing all these people like, oh, over the past 9 months, I've gotten worse. You know, it's people are just inactive. So I think since I've had, and I understand having such a passion for something active, so I would love to just help people find something too of, you don't have to go to the gym and exercise. You can get in the water. You can, you know, golf. You can play tennis. You can go dancing with your, you know, significant other. You know, do something that just gets you, you know, bike riding, kayaking. There's so many options. Go just walk around at the park. You know,
Go play.
Yeah.
Like a kid, play.
Yeah.
Have fun.
But it's just it's as simple as that. You just have to find something that inspires someone to want to be active, because not everyone is built the same. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, you guys need to go dance. It's so much fun. You know, you might not get as much.
Well, I look great in a unitard anyway.
A unitard, a nice leotard
Is that what
tights
it's
there.
called? It's a unitard?
A
No, it's
leotard.
Leotard.
Oh, yeah, I look great as a unitard.
Don't worry, you fit any kind of tard.
Oh, thank you very much. You know, as a group, and the lone wolf group, we're doing great. Did you get that reference?
You're referencing Hangover.
I'm trying to, but I probably
Trying to.
fuck out of it.
I get where the reference comes from. I don't understand what you mean.
Okay. Because I thought we both were tards together,
Oh, okay.
but apparently not.
No.
I'm the only tard in the group.
Yeah, it's unitard.
I'm the ugly
Unitard.
friend.
Unitard.
I'm the ugly friend in this group, and I hang out with you because you make me look better, right? Or I make you look better because
There
I'm
you
so
go.
ugly.
Yeah. Right.
That makes no sense.
That sucks.
That's okay.
I
Next
think-
time.
Oh, I'm the ugly friend. At least I'm the smart one, right?
Yes.
Oh,
I'll
maybe.
give you that.
Okay.
You can be the smart one.
So, no, but you're right. Joe and I have talked about this over and over and over and over and over again, and we bash our head into a wall because as a profession, we tell people, and historically, we've told people, do these exercises, you're going to have to do them every day for the rest of your life. That in itself is retarded, because you shouldn't have to. You should be able to get back to a nice, productive, and enjoyable life.
It's not realistic either.
It's not practical. I mean, give me a break. And not only that, what if they don't enjoy the activity anyway?
Mm-hmm.
So, like Joe and I talked about before, and we were talking about exercise, the history of physical exercise. It's not exercise per se. That's a supplement to lifestyle. That's a supplement to physical activity. You have to find something that permits you to be physically active while maintaining your health. So it doesn't matter if you're kayaking, fishing, or dancing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you sit on your butt on the couch, and you relegate yourself to sedentary behavior, you know what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
And your body will adapt. It will evolve. You just may not like it.
Right. Well, and then it's, you know, you get into a whole nother realm of mental health then. I mean, for the people that do sit on the couch all day, I mean, just overcoming those barriers and of, you know, difficulty of I just don't want to do anything, not because I don't want a better lifestyle, but because I just physically cannot produce the, you know, the internal, you know, desire to want to get up and do something. So it's
And inactivity, sedentary lifestyles, they propagate
absolutely
inactivity and sedentary lifestyles. So you have to find something you enjoy, something that is fun, and something you want to do on a frequent and consistent basis. It doesn't have to be going to the gym and slinging Benjamin Franklin dumbbells around. I think about him like, you've seen those Trump pictures. Trump's a tall fat guy with like orange skin.
He's a walking caricature.
He is a walking character. But I really love the fact that like his supporters, and there's nothing against his supporters, but they have pictures of him jacked. Like he's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like when did he ever look like that? Even when he was young, he never looked like that, right? And so when I think of Benjamin Franklin, I almost think of him in that same sense. You know, he's a short, stubby guy. Yeah, he's jacked. Bald head, still the same haircut. Bald with the hair, the mullet, the bifocals on, and he's just like, yeah, I had a thing of carrot juice this morning. Yeah, cold carrot juice to break the fever. As he's holding a kite with the key on it to discover, like,
That's a good image. That's a good
Well,
image.
But, I think he can do it.
So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I think just finding, I mean, for the population I'm working with right now, that's kind of how I take my passion, and I'm trying to pay it forward to say, hey, this isn't, because I know I would want to go lift weights every single day. That's
I agree.
boring.
I agree.
Boring.
I think it's great too to try to get some of these 80-year-old chicks to get on point. They can barely do a calf raise as it is. If you can get them to get on point, they're going to be great.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I doubt that.
They can ditch the walker at that point, right?
Oh yeah, just walk around on their toes all day.
But I mean, who's to say that they can't do that?
Oh yeah.
Who's to say?
Well, the thing, yeah.
They can progress. They can build themselves up to that, right? If they cared, if they wanted to.
It'd be interesting because I feel like bony changes, and with osteoporotic women, I would worry about.
Yeah,
But it's at the same time, I guess it'd be good to improve their overall bone density.
When you talk about bony changes and structural changes, a lot of these people have been developing their current structure for 80 years.
Yeah.
Right. But that's not to say that they can't continue to adapt.
Oh, but
in the
they
opposite
could
direction.
in the opposite.
It's just you just got to be progressive, and you got to be you got to dose it right. That's all.
because they put girls on point at age 7.
Well, forget about them being at point. They can't even pick their heels up on both legs.
Yeah.
Now, just so I am clear, you're talking on point, like on the tip of the toes.
That's always been mine. But you may be saying on the ball of your foot. Is that your on point?
No, I was literally being facetious.
Oh.
But as a break dancer, on point was on my finger.
Okay. One finger?
One finger.
Pinky.
As I spun around
Okay.
on the pinky finger.
On the pinky finger.
And we can attach some links to your breakdancing days, right? We have some videos of Ray on point.
I'm sure we can find some videos of a guy that looks like me that I would like to have dressed like. And, I'm sure we can find something like that.
I will say,
the
back in high school, my best friend, one of my best friends in high school, did start breakdancing, was learning. It was senior year. I was highly interested, would have certainly been doing that with him if I hadn't torn my ACL that year and been recovering. Now, thinking about it now from my therapist point of view, I probably could have still done that.
Probably been helpful.
After surgery, after several weeks of recovery, I certainly could have gotten into breakdancing. I think I was really afraid of doing anything that entire year.
Well, that's typical.
But man, I'm thinking, boy, for all of these years, until just this moment, I've been thinking, well, I would have learned how to breakdance back then, but I just couldn't.
Can you breakdance to metal, to heavy metal?
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm sure you could, yeah.
You can?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people out there that breakdance to like classical music.
I'm gonna YouTube this. I want to see if people are breakdancing to classical
Oh, I'm sure they are.
and to heavy metal. I have been watching some serious violinists play AC/DC, and some rap music.
It's incredible.
But I'm just trying to imagine you, in a mosh pit, breakdancing, and then jumping into the crowd with your hair down.
I'm sure that somebody has broke it down, breakdanced, whatever you call it, in the middle of a mosh pit. It's not as common as, moshing or slam dancing as we see, which is...
Is that what the youngsters are calling it these days?
That is probably not what the youngsters are calling it. I don't know if the youngsters are even into heavy metal and mosh pits or, that kind of a scene, but that's what it is called. Or at some of the hardcore shows or the heavy metal shows, where you see the guys just flailing their fists around and throwing it down.
That just sounds
almost literally.
It sounds like a bunch of assholes who've been drinking and just want to fight in a crowd.
Sounds aggressive.
It
does sound very aggressive.
I think I'd rather hang out with the chicks that are standing on point. First of all,
me too.
They're way hotter. And the ratio is certainly in your favor. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know.
It's an interesting group of people. It's an interesting culture, I'll say, because a lot of it, the guys don't want to fight. There's a lot of, you get knocked down, everybody picks you back up in there. And
community.
Yeah, and you do have the person, usually one or maybe two out there that do get shoved. They do get hit. They might walk into a fist or something like.
They don't get hit. They walked into it.
They bounced right into it. They headbang
and
themselves
they do get upset.
The knee, yeah.
But
well, let me ask you this: what's the point of doing armpits, asshole, crotch, and teeth if you're going to go out mosh pitting and just get bloody and sweaty anyway? Wouldn't you want to, be hygienic, if we're saying that's hygienic, when you're hanging out with a bunch of ballerinas?
I don't understand the question. What do you mean the point?
I'm just thinking of like it's way sweaty to be in a crowd, slamming each other, punching each other, kicking each other, falling on the ground. You're gonna get dirtier. So why even clean yourself up?
Well,
I'd much rather be hygienic with armpits, asshole, crotch, and teeth if I'm hanging out with some ballerinas.
I don't know if the ballerinas would want to hang out with you.
Well, they wouldn't know until the very last instant. And at that point, what's their options? But, So, well, okay, that's cool. So, certainly you can start breakdancing at any moment in your life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Even as a middle-aged man.
Well, sorry, kind of a tangent, I follow a lot of people like dance rehab stuff on Instagram, and I'll go through, and I mean, you get people on their walkers, and they're doing dances. I mean, it's never too late to.
But that's my point.
I see, and now we're coming full circle,
that's
and I 100% agree. I see what you're saying.
Nana, if you're listening to this, I expect you to be on point within 8 to 12 weeks from now. And if she can stay on point on one foot, imagine her gait speed.
Oh my
imagine her
gosh.
stability. Imagine her ability to walk and over a puddle, or to no longer plop on the couch, and maybe she won't fart as much when we're watching Alf.
Is there correlation of single leg stance to farting?
I'm just saying, there's a reason why grandma wears a diaper. And if she was a little bit more physically active, I don't think she'd have to.
So I was thinking about this as you were talking about it. The notion that just being active, enjoying you're having a lifestyle of either tennis player, kayaker, or activity, bike rider, mosh pitter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is certainly great, and certainly the lifestyle that one should have to do some sort of physical activity that they enjoy. However, I don't know that I'm convinced that you can thrive solely off of that activity. Take, for instance, the bike rider, somebody that's riding tens of hundreds of miles a day or a week, or say hundreds of miles a week, that they could be apt to put in, to be void of any other type of exercise, any other type of strengthening to promote, muscular well-being or bodily balance. I'm having a hard time grasping that.
You're going into our next concept, but again, the point is they're doing they're participating in a physical activity that their body will adapt and evolve to become more metabolically efficient. Mm-hmm. And to help them within that lifestyle. Yes, you should have a variety of activities. Mm-hmm. You don't live and sleep on a bike. However, we are going to talk about the implications of exercise and immune support, as well as other arrays of the aspects of the body. So I think that you're right, and that's where we're going to be going into that down the road. But if you're physically active as a biker, you may have better cardiovascular health, better pulmonary health. You may have some problems with bone hardness, or you may suffer from osteoporosis, osteopenia, because obviously you're not getting the impact and the loading. You may have some neck pain from the position of the bike. You may have some quad dominance and some knee issues, however, that you can address via other ways. And I think there's more naturalistic activities that allow the body to function optimally compared to others. However, I think if a person enjoys something, they're more apt to be physically active, and if they find that physical motivation, do it. And I do think that they'll tend to have a better life.
Yeah.
But the biker's still going to walk, still going to carry their bike. They're going to do other things. And if they really love biking, they're probably going to do some resistance training, some jogging.
Yeah, that's what my dad is a huge biker, and he just wanted to be more efficient. So, he started working more on his hamstrings. So in order to have efficient, cycling, you have to supplement to an extent with other things to be at your best, if that's something that you want. Then you get people that bike ride just for leisure and, go on a trail a couple miles here and there, and that I think you need to supplement even more with something else. But again, like you said, it's better than just sitting there and doing nothing. It's a start.
Yeah, it's 100% better.
Runner supplement.
Yeah.
Break dancers and mosh pitters, they box. and kickbox.
Boxing's, yeah, that's
You know.
cool stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think, we're going to talk about the difference and all that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
but I think it's just about getting out there. And I always tell people, whenever I do an education, it's about be a kid again. Be a child. Don't do it because you feel like you have to. Do it because you're having fun. And if that means you get a bunch of 80-year-olds on a playground and they're playing hide and seek and tag,
Sounds like
that's
a good
great.
time to me.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
My question is, at that age, do they have to cover their eyes to count?
They probably can't see anyways. I mean,
I'm just well, technology these days, maybe, I don't know. But I'm just wondering,
that's
And
funny.
so, all right, well, I think we can wrap this up and just call it a day. Do you have anything else to say, Brittany?
Oh gosh, I feel like I've exhausted myself. I probably said more than I need to say, but
No, you're fantastic. Yeah,
you guys, this was fun.
you're going to have a bright future. You really
Aw.
are.
No,
I really enjoy the opportunity that we've got to work with you and get to know you a
Thank you.
little bit. So, whomever that special young man is out there that has you, I'm not going to say his name. Better seal the deal.
yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
That's right.
I've been saying it,
To
but
the left, to the left, to the left. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. That being said, I think we're all done. So,
woohoo.
cue drums.
And now we'd like to take time for our thank
Oh.
yous and our special donations.
Thank you, you beautiful individual of a man. Thank you. I would have forgotten that. Yeah. So again, we want to remind everybody that we're not looking to monetize this podcast, but if it's possible to earn to earn a little bit of money to help us keep this operation going, if you enjoy the education, you can donate to. Oh God, what is that? I forget. I'll remind you in another podcast, but you can certainly donate to our podcast. Subscribe us, like us, so that way we have more opportunity to get advertisers. But 25% of any profits that we have will go directly to Cystic Fibrosis, Muscular Dystrophy Association, and for Spinal Muscular Atrophy Association. We are very passionate physical therapists and providers, so we certainly want to help out those charities as best we can, especially with the newer technologies out there that could possibly save children from ever experiencing these conditions and also help those that are struggling with these conditions at this present time. The other thing that I like to do, I'm so glad that you reminded me of that, Joe. I totally forgot. I want to send my special thanks to some people that have inspired me and Joe to go ahead and do this. Otherwise, we probably would have done it. We were talking about it for 2 years, and we finally got it going. So I want to send a thank you to Joe Rogan, Sam Harris, Sean Carroll, and Adam Meekins. Adam Meekins, you beautiful British bastard. Love the shit out of all of you guys. You guys really inspired us to get this going. You're very thought-provoking. Your intellects, although from different perspectives, if it wasn't for your influence, I don't know if we would have had the courage to do this. So thank you very much for your influence on us and getting us going. Appreciate it. What about you?
Oh, I was just letting you speak for
For both of us.
both of us.
All right, let's shut it down.
Thank
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate it.